Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is still in the hospital, but out of intensive care after spending at least 4 days there last week for complications from an elective procedure performed before Christmas. Many questions about his illness remain, including why he waited days to inform President Biden or announce publicly that he was hospitalized. Nick Schifrin's been following this, and he is here with me now. Nick, it's good to see you.
Thanks very much.
So what did we learn from the Pentagon today, and how is President Biden responding to this?
So the Pentagon said that Austin is, quote, recovering well and is in good spirits. And the National Security Council spokesman John Kirby expressed confidence in Austin's leadership. But as you say, Amna, there are huge questions today about that leadership, especially after the Pentagon admitted that there was actually a second stay in the hospital that Austin didn't disclose to the public or to the president. So let's go through the calendar according to senior White House, defense, military, and congressional officials I spoke to. So on December 22nd, Austin underwent an elective procedure and transferred his authorities temporarily to his deputy, but did not inform her of why or acknowledge it publicly. That is hospital visit number one. On January 1st, Austin participated in a secure call with President Biden and later that day experienced, quote, extreme pain and was taken to Walter Reed Intensive Care in an ambulance, hospital visit number two. No national security official was informed. And even when the next day, January 2nd, he again transferred his authorities to Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks, you see her there, nobody told her why she was assuming the responsibilities. Austin's front office informed the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that day, C.Q. Brown, but nobody called the president. That didn't happen for another 2 days, January 4th, when National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan was informed and Hicks learned for the first time that Austin was in the hospital. That was the day, Amna, by the way, that a U.S. drone strike killed the head of an Iranian-backed militia in Baghdad. The next day, January 5th, that is when Austin finally resumes his duties, and only then, exactly 2 weeks after the initial procedure, inform Congress and releases a public statement. Among the many questions that remain unanswered tonight, Amna, what was Austin's initial procedure? Was he ever incapacitated or unconscious? And why did the chief of staff, or anyone, frankly, wait for so long to call the National Security Council?
Do we expect to get any answers to those questions about Austin's health? And also, how is the Pentagon explaining the delay in notifying the National Security Advisor?
They're not. They say that Kelly Magsamen, the chief of staff, had the flu, although that's not the excuse that they say of why. They do admit that they did not communicate in the way they should have. And today, Major General Pat Ryder, the spokesman for the Defense Department, he fell on a sword, basically. He admitted that last Tuesday, he knew about the hospitalization, but didn't disclose it during a Thursday briefing because he didn't have enough details. He said this today in a gaggle with reporters, I should have tried to learn more and to press for an earlier public acknowledgement, but he also added later, I did not feel I was at liberty to disclose that information. That is an explanation that is not sitting well with Congress. Even some Democrats are expressing some concern. And take a look at this. This is from Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, the vice chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. She's been an ally of the Pentagon. She said, quote, it is inexplicable. The secretary's condition remains shrouded in secrecy. He must be forthcoming about the nature of his illness and his ability to do his job.
Nick, there are still so many unanswered questions. Why is all of this important to put together the timeline and understand what happened here?
Every cabinet official is expected to call the National Security Council if he or she is going to be hospitalized. But the Secretary of Defense is the second in the military chain of command behind only President Biden and is expected to be accessible to the president even in the most dire national security situation, some kind of nuclear exchange. Take a listen to Columbia law professor Matt Waxman, who's a former NSC state and DoD official.
This is dangerous for several reasons. The president may need advice, military or defense policy advice on short notice. We have military forces engaged actively in operations under threat, in some cases under attack. And finally, you never know whether there might be some urgent and unexpected crisis for which a secretary or acting secretary is needed immediately. There absolutely has to be a review. I mean, this is a terrible and scary breakdown at the top of the Pentagon.
The Pentagon promises to do that review, Amna, and insists that there was no break in the continuity of military operations. And despite the political criticism, the Pentagon says Austin has no plans to resign, and the White House has no plans to ask for it.
All right. I know you'll keep looking for answers. Nick Schifrin, great reporting as always.
Thanks very much.